Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the September 3rd, 2019 Board of Aldermen regular meeting. Would everyone please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Shelley.
Present.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderwoman
Here.
Tice. Here. Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
And Alderman Weggie.
Here. Next on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Are there any modifications with the understanding that if there's any request to move something off the consent agenda, we can do it at that time? Other than that, are there any changes to the proposed agenda? Any objection to approving it by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Next on the agenda is item 4, announcements, appointments, proclamations, and recognitions. And we have one. That is for Ms. Caitlin Sowers. Is that correct? Please. Whereas Caitlin Sowers is a resident of the city of Brentwood and has graduated in 2019 from Brentwood High School, and whereas Caitlin has been a member of the Girl Scouts of America and through self-determination worked as a Soul Scout and completed the last 4 years of scouting and accomplished all of the requirements to receive the Girl Scouts Gold Award, which included a 7-step plan to 1, identify an issue, 2, investigate it thoroughly, 3, get help and build a team, 4, create a plan, 5, present your plan and get feedback, 6, take action, and 7, educate and inspire. By recording fife and drum music for recruits to listen to, watch and learn from, and uploading written music, thereby creating and adding to the resources of the Lewis and Clark Fife and Drum Corps webpage, which has improved the Corps recruitment efforts and inspired other members to add additional content for drummers and color guard members. Along with this effort, she and her crew made videos of the fife and drum music and regalia as educational material for interested members and public education of the Corps mission. Excuse me. And whereas Caitlin excelled in her efforts for the Gold Award in scouting by also completing the requirements for the U.S. Congressional Medal Award sponsored by Representative Ann Wagner, whereas Caitlin's efforts required more than 400 hours of voluntary service with the Fife and Drum Corps, more than 200 hours of personnel development completing grade 8 of SCT Irish music examinations, more than 200 hours of physical fitness doing Irish dancing, and more than 4 nights, 5 days expedition or exploration with a 16-day travel in Ireland. And whereas Caitlin chose to put forth this effort around her love for the Lewis and Clark Fife and Drum Corps, which she was introduced to by friends Carissa Igo, Kurt Buchanan in December of 2012, and whereas through her efforts, leadership, determination, and passion, Caitlin has exemplified personal character and demonstrated her value to this community. Now, therefore, I, David Dimmitt, by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Brentwood, Missouri, and on behalf of the Board of Aldermen for the city of Brentwood, do hereby congratulate Girl Scout Gold Award and U.S. Congressional Gold Medal recipient Caitlin Sowers for her accomplishments and wish her the very best in all her future endeavors. Presented this 3rd day of September, 2019.
Your Honor, if I may.
Sure.
In the 20 years that I've been an alderman for the city of Brentwood, a number of times we have recognized the Boy Scouts of America for a number of the boys that have accomplished their Eagle. We've done it about 5 times for the Girl Scouts, for those that have gotten their Gold Award through the Girl Scout program. This is the first time in the last 20 years plus that we have recognized a citizen of Brentwood for also completing the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal Award because of its requirements and the endeavor that it takes to accomplish it. That makes this award so special, and I really do appreciate and love the fact that, Caitlin, you did a wonderful job. You really did.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Leahy. Next on the agenda is item 5A, case number 19-08. I am going to gavel open the public hearing for case 1908. A public hearing to consider amendment of a conditional use permit and site plan review to amend the CUP for a hotel for property zoned UD Urban Development District and located at 1695 South Hanley Road. Anyone in the public care to address the board? Now is the time to do so. Seeing none, we will gavel close the public hearing for case number 19-08. Next on the agenda is item 6, citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board on any matter, you will be allowed up to 3 minutes to do so. Next on the agenda, Mayor and Alderman reports. Mayor David Dimmitt. The only report that I have is a couple of upcoming events. Again, Brentwood Days, September 20th to 21st. And on the morning of the 20th is a breakfast with the mayor over at the firehouse. And I think that's it for the mayor. Oh, and the 5K in the morning. And I am trying very hard to get ready for that.
You'll have the starting gun.
Well, I might be testing out our fire department and their ambulance skills. Next, Alderman Kramer.
No report at this time, Your Honor.
Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, the Ward 3 meeting for the month of September will be Tuesday night, the 24th of September, in the Brentwood Rec Center, starting at 7 p.m. All are invited for an informal discussion of what's going on in Brentwood.
Thank you. Alderwoman O'Neill.
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On September 10th, 2019, Ward 1 will have its meeting at the Rec Center, 6:30. That's Tuesday.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmuller.
The Public Works Committee will meet next Wednesday, September 12th at 6 o'clock right here in this room. Thank you.
Alderwoman Sims.
The Ways and Means Committee meeting will take place this Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report, but I look forward to seeing residents of Ward 1 at the meeting a week from tonight.
And Alderman Weggie.
There is a MSD neighborhood meeting on September 24th at 5 p.m. at the Rec Center. This is for some of the storm sewers that they'll be putting in next year to present those plans. I haven't been able to figure out if there is also a meeting for the one that's going on the Bridgeport, but we'll make sure we publicize that once it's available. September 24th, 5 p.m.
Thank you. Next up, City Administrator's Report. Item A, report from KEB, independent review of expenditures of proceeds of the 2018 series certificates of participation. Lisa, are you handling that, or is Karen, or somebody from KEB?
Can go ahead and introduce this item. So this is the second quarter report, April 1st through June 30th, 2019, for kind of an audit of the certificates of participation proceeds for the Brentwood Bound. We do have, I believe, representatives from Kerber, Eck, and Brakel here this evening, and also Karen Shaw, our finance director, is here. If she would.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and the Board of Aldermen, for having me here today. My name is Gina Cochran. I am a partner with Kerber, Eck, and Brakel, a regional CPA firm here in St. Louis. We are here to go over the, as mentioned, the expenditures of the certificate of participation proceeds for 2018 for the period of April 1st through June 30th of 19. Just as a reminder, the mayor and the Board of Aldermen agreed to the procedures that were performed, and we can present to you those findings in the report, but we can't answer the why the procedures were not followed in the exceptions that we did find. So in the procedures covering that period discussed, it was request number 20 through 26, and it covered 37 invoices, which totaled about $7.3 million in expenditures under the Certificate of Participation proceeds. In the first procedure, we compare the invoices paid to signed contracts that are approved by the Board of Aldermen, and we found no exceptions in that testing, as detailed in the findings in the report. In the second procedure, we look at the invoices, we examine those to determine if the city's procedures and internal controls are followed. So we did have a few exceptions in that area. We had one exception related to a court order where the check request form and the capital form were not completed. However, the management communicated that that was the case because of the fact that the Board of Aldermen approved that expenditure at their closed meeting. However, it was an exception, so we're required to report that. And then we would note also that the listing of that item on the warrant list was performed after the fact of the payment also. But again, the board did approve it at a meeting prior to the payment being made, which we feel was very important to report to you. Then we had two exceptions where a check request form, it was completed by an administrative assistant and signed by that administrative assistant and also signed by the finance director, but it was not, that check request form was not approved by the department director. I would mention, however, though those invoices prior to being paid, they were placed on the warrant list that was prepared by the finance director. It was reviewed by the city administrator, and the Board of Aldermen did approve it at the meeting prior to payment. So those procedures were in fact followed. In procedure number 3, we examined invoices that were paid to ensure that the payments were for expenditures that were covered by the official statement of the Certificate of Participation, and we had no exceptions in that procedure performed. Any follow-up questions?
Any questions? Alderman Plufka?
So as I understand it, of the 37 invoices that were looked at, you found 3 exceptions, one of which seemed to be a timing exception.
Correct.
And the other 2 had to do more with procuring the appropriate signatures prior to the payment of the invoices. And I guess my question is not so much for you as it is for maybe Lisa or staff, is that did either of those exceptions cause you to want to revisit or change or in any way alter the procedures by which those checks are being processed?
Lisa, actually, I think Karen is in a position to
Okay.
to respond to this.
The exact same thing she nailed us on last quarter.
Yeah,
But
that was my next question.
But before, we could make changes by the time we got the report. We'd already done some, April. And yes, the procedure's been changed. Administrative assistant doesn't touch this paperwork anymore. It's only Bola and I.
Okay.
And basically, as a finance director, when my signature goes on it, it's been reviewed for everything. The department head would have been Bola in this case. But I don't prepare anything for anything, payment for $2,000 or for $4 million for purchase of property without the documentation from Bola or whoever needs to give it to me. You can just ask Lisa this week since Bola's been gone. But yeah, we changed it.
Okay.
She's not doing it anymore.
Thank you. That's a question I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Great. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, item 8B, Brentwood Bound update. Craig, are you gonna?
Good evening, Craig Schlitter with Navigate Building Solutions. I'll be providing the Brentwood Bound update. There were 3 expenses on the warrant list as it relates to the COPs. 2 of them were soft costs. Those include Manchester Road improvements, design and engineering, and property appraisal. Total spent to date is $2,510,363.90. The other expense was a property acquisition item, and that was the Closet Factory's relocation. It's the first of 2 payments. Total spent to date is $8,354,149.09.
Any questions for Craig? Alderman Lockmiller.
Greg, on the MoDOT portion of Brentwood Bound, where are they at? Are they final design yet? And
They are working on final design, but it's in the slow period of design as MoDOT's property acquisition team works on all the right-of-way acquisitions. So they, in the Brentwood portion of the project, because their portion goes through multiple municipalities, they have 3 property appraisals and a firm that's called OR Colon, who handles all the offers and negotiations on behalf of MoDOT. So all that is in progress right now along Manchester Road in the Brentwood corridor.
thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Craig?
I just have a comment for Craig. Thank you. I've made such a stink for so many months about this form, so I just wanted to thank you for the additions and changes you've made and say it publicly on the record that the month-to-month changes and the specifics that you're adding on to this are really helpful. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, item 9, the consent agenda. It's not quite as heavy as last time. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 items, 10 maybe. Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, I'd like to request that Resolution 1176 and Resolution 1177, both of these are the MSD resolutions, be taken up separately.
Second.
Did you have to second on the consent?
No. Well, I
Remove them from the consent. and
Yeah,
put-
no,
Yeah.
that's fine. We can go ahead and take both
you, sir.
those off at your request. Anyone else have any requests to take anything else or have any questions about the consent agenda before I read it off? Okay, what we have on the consent agenda is item A, standing committee reports. B are the warrant lists for the operating funds and 2019 expenditures from the 2018 series certificates of participation proceeds. Items C and D are the minutes of August 7th and July 15th, 2019 Board of Aldermen meetings respectively. Item E is the resolution number 1174, which is a resolution readopting and reaffirming the code policies pursuant to conflicts of interest for elected and appointed officials. Resolution 75, which is a resolution authorizing an agreement with SSM Executive Health and the City of Brentwood, Missouri for professional services related to annual firefighter wellness and fitness evaluations. 76 and 77 have been removed, which leaves us with 3 all special use permits. One for the food truck night for St. Mary Magdalene School. That would be a special use permit to provide beer and wine for the September 27th, 2019 food truck night. A special use permit application for Arbum Incorporated doing business as Hacienda Mexican Restaurant, which would be to also a food truck night hosted by Elaine Rossi Academy for Children for September 13th. And finally, a special use permit application for Enterprise Bank and Trust, where there'll be a booth for wine and tasting on September 20th during Brentwood Days. With that, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. Alderman Leahy.
On the last special use permit for the wine and beer tasting, they've listed only the one date, the Saturday. Does that mean they're not running a booth on the Friday night? I think the permit should be for both nights.
Wonder if that was an error. I mean, I think we could go ahead and just approve it probably for both nights as well, so it covers it.
I would like to make that motion if we could amend this one to include both Friday and Saturday, the 19th and the 20th of September for Brentwood Days.
So we're making a change to the application. Right.
Well, that way at least it would be covered. If it's only for Friday night, then they still have approval for Friday night as well. And unless maybe Parks Director would have some knowledge as to why it would be just for one night, but I think it was probably just an omission, so.
I'll amend, or Are you doing a, I'll amend the original motion.
Okay.
I'll
Well, and I do notice that the application says proposed starting
For
date
one
is.
night.
August.
Well, it says August the 20th, 2019.
Yeah.
Number of days permit required is 1. So, I mean, I think it's,
It might be a human error. And what I hate to have is we've
Right.
rented a booth out to them, and then one night they cannot do anything because we missed the
Right.
dates.
Right.
This way, we've covered it. If they choose not to use it, that's fine. They're good for Saturday.
okay.
Just to be sure, those dates are the 20th and the 21st.
I'm sorry.
Correct.
That's, yes.
September 20th and 21st. Madam Excise Commissioner, do you have any objection to doing it that way?
No objection.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion then to approve the consent agenda as amended relating to the special use permit application for Enterprise Bank and Trust. And we have a second on that. Can we get a roll call, please, Shelley?
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Alderwoman O'Neill, can you hear us?
Oh, is she frozen?
She's very still.
Hold up there.
Rose face, yes.
Oh, there she
I
is.
think I saw a blink.
Alderwoman O'Neill, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Are you voting on the consent agenda?
You fade in and out.
Ah,
Yes. I'm voting yes.
okay, great.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda, item 10, old business. We have 3 matters. The first is Bill number 6133.2, 10A. Can we get a second reading on Bill number 6133.2 by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. Second reading of Bill 6133.2, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 4783 and approving a site development plan and granting a conditional use permit for operation of a hotel to EQH Brentwood LLC for property numbered 1695 South Hanley Road.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Do we have any reports on this? Just
Not at this time.
Okay, and the board, just by way of quick background, this is, there are 3 matters dealing with all the same entity, and that's the Equus Hotel that we talked about the last meeting. And this first one, again, is a site plan review. This is the one that came out of planning and zoning. They had multiple meetings to deal with this, and they came out with a unanimous positive recommendation. So at this point, I guess we would open it up for debate on 6133.2.
Let's have to get a motion to perfect.
Do we
Do
need?
you want a motion to perfect to start discussion?
Yeah, sure.
I move to perfect Bill 6133.2 in the ordinance form.
Second.
Okay, we've got the motion and a second by Alderwoman Sims. Okay, now,
There we go.
the chair will entertain debate on 6133.2. Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. I do have a question, and I want to thank Lisa for sending the materials I requested with regard to the possibility of access to the light to the property to the north using Home Depot. And I guess I just have a question as to, I saw the different proposals that were made. It looks like there were 6 of them altogether. And I'm just curious as to how far that got in the conversation. Did Home Depot, were they ever receptive to allowing that kind of access?
Sure. So what Alderman Plufka is referring to, actually before the original proposal was even filed, this was more during preliminary discussions before they submitted their site development plan and conditional use permit. And what we had talked about is, again, just because this parcel doesn't have commercial frontage, was there any way just to improve not only the access to the hotel, but was there any kind of gain or benefit, public benefit, maybe from looking at also the adjacent parcels to figure out better traffic flow for several property owners? So again, all of those discussions happened before the filing of the first proposal. So my recollection from fall of 2016 to when they filed the first part of 2017 was that we did work with the developer. We engaged CBB to look at various traffic alternatives for, again, not only the hotel property, but also 5 adjacent properties. So there were various alternatives that was discussed. It involved, the discussions involved also Home Depot, Lion's Choice, not so much McDonald's, but if it would have reached a certain point, we probably would have engaged McDonald's a little bit more. But also Wayland Security and the APA, the Animal Protective Association. So with that, again, we tried to work with all the property owners to find really an optimum traffic solution that would just benefit everyone. And we just really, again, I don't want to point fingers, but we could not get all 5 parties to really agree on one of these other alternatives. And so it never reached the stage where really we even, I would say, had ballpark figures of how much any of these alternatives would have cost. What we were trying to do in order to get this moving forward was to try to find direct benefits or gain for every property owner. But out of the parties that I mentioned, there was really not positive gains for some of those parties. And so therefore, it just never materialized.
That's really a shame, especially given items 10B and 10C that are coming up here in just a couple of minutes. I mean, in my opinion, if you're talking about asking for abatement, if you're talking about the reduction in tax, one of the things the city is going to be looking out for, especially in a situation like this, given this type of property, is anything that makes ingress and egress safer. And I think that would have gone a long way to doing that if that had happened. And I'm not pointing fingers because, I mean, if Home Depot is not willing to talk about providing such an easement, then so be it. But I would have even been receptive to a plan wherein if Home Depot was down to asking for additional money for this kind of an easement, because they were giving up on perhaps some future development plan on that south side of their property, I would have been receptive to increasing the abatement and extending the abatement to coincide with the amount of money it would have cost, because that's the kind of activity I'd like to reward with a tax abatement as something that makes that property infinitely more safe as it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Leahy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir. If I may have a little bit of conversation on the parking arrangements. At current, the newest suggestion is to accept the 101 spots as the requirement for this facility. But as I read the letters, it says that there are, I believe it was 27 compact spots that, as I read the letter, seemed to be a negative comment as to that many compacted spots to work with.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. My name's Lee Cannon with CBB, for the record. And just so we're clear, CBB completed a traffic study as well as a parking study. That's the one that you're referring to. And we worked as your consultant to the city. It is true that we are comfortable with the 101 parking spaces provided to serve that hotel. And item number 6 in our parking summary report indicated that we didn't support the use of compact stalls clustered on the site because we didn't figure that all of the small cars would go to one place and all the large cars would go to another. And I don't know the mix of vehicles that come to hotels. And,
depends on who's coming.
Yes. So there are compact vehicles that come. In our experience, it's a little difficult to make sure that the compact cars go in those and that the wider go in it. So we'd even be open to having less stalls and all full width potentially based on the shift in vehicular use, for things like hotels. A lot of visitors that come stay at this hotel may use a shuttle if they have one, or ride share, or those types of non-vehicle activities. So.
Further question, if I may, Your Honor?
Sure.
Has there been any cross-parking agreement made with, as I understand it, the old Wheelan facility with the new owners?
That is an answer I do not know. It would be potentially beneficial to both parties if that were to happen, but I do not know the answer to that.
Is the applicant here?
I believe so.
I would like to add one thing to that.
Yes, sir.
This is a very unique site.
Yes.
In which the hotel gains access via an easement across the Wheelan site, and there are certain parking stalls that you have to cross properties to get to, and so I don't know if the easement language specifically speaks to that or not, but it probably should.
That's where I'd like it to go. Simply in the fact that I'd hate to approve something where I then get another property owner upset because of miscommunication and having people towed in the middle of the night because they're parked in places that the other people don't want them. So I want to know if that has been addressed and resolved to the point that we don't approve something that creates a bigger problem.
I would defer that to the applicant.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh. No, come on.
Greg Mullinex. Mr.
Greg,
Leahy.
good evening.
Good evening. We are finalizing our agreement right now with the Twardowskis who own the Whalen property, which is now called Garda.
Okay.
We are working out the cross-access easements specifically. They don't have a whole lot of interest in shared parking. And we, honestly, from day one, I think Lee was part of those discussions. Lisa was part, as part of this whole, we did all those iterations that were mentioned earlier about how to get different access points. They've never been open to any kind of shared parking, and I think what is unusual is this is a textbook shared parking situation, office to hotel. But we feel, and obviously the city's, CBB feels that the situation is functional. We have to operate the hotel at the end of the day, both from a traffic concern and from a parking concern, and we have overcome that. CBB feels comfortable. We feel comfortable. Our finance company, who does just hotels, we've all worked through these operational concerns. We won't let that happen. What you described about the neighboring property is going to be towing our cars, we won't let that happen. We will police our site. We'll make sure that we have the parking required. I don't think, based on our experience, we have a hotel. We actually recently sold a hotel in Clayton. We have a hotel in Richmond Heights. We have a hotel downtown. All of our hotels now do not meet one-to-one parking and don't need it. Is where we're at today. They're 80% or lower, actually.
In your application, you're also requesting, I believe the total is 8 signs to help advertise that you're in existence because you're not really out on the face of the road. Are there any signs that you will be putting up advising your guest that the other parking area is not available?
Yeah, we try to stay away from the negative connotation
Understand.
on signage.
Yes.
But we are working, that's part of the discussion with Whalen of how do we sign it that it feels appropriate for them and for us. So we'll work through that. We will have signage to make sure they know that's their property.
Yeah.
Don't
Because
park
you've
there,
got the
park
one
on our
strip
property.
that's only a foot wide.
Correct.
Yeah, to work with. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else? Alderman Lockmuller?
I also, if Mr. Mullinex could stick around, I got a couple of quick questions. Now, you just mentioned something, so you're going to be the developer and operator on the back end?
That's correct.
Okay, and then originally this came forth with a parking garage. How many places would that have added?
We did it per zoning at one-to-one parking.
Okay, and the
plus maximum shift.
The additional cost of that garage was approximately?
$2.75 million more.
Oh, really?
That was dramatic.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, before we take a vote, it has been brought to my attention that I have not always been reading the synopsis as is required. This board passed a resolution in December, I think it was, of last year, and I I assured this person who brought this to my attention that I would do my best to remember to read the synopsis from here on out. So with that, Lisa, are you in a position to read the synopsis on this?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, Bill number 6133.2, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 4783 and approving a site development plan and granting a conditional use permit for operation of a hotel to EQH Brentwood LLC for property numbered 1695 South Hanley Road. A petition was received from EQH Brentwood LLC to repeal ordinance number 4783 and approve a site development plan and obtain a conditional use permit to construct a hotel for property located at 1695 South Hanley Road. On June 19th, 2017, the petitioner EQH Brentwood LLC received Board of Aldermen approval to rezone the property from LID Light Industrial District to UD Urban Development. Additionally, the petitioner received conditional use permit and site development approval to construct a 7-story hotel and parking structure on the property. Since receiving approval, the petitioner desires to construct a very similar in size 7-story hotel and provide surface parking rather than construct the parking structure. The request by EQH Brentwood LLC to repeal ordinance number 4783 and approve a site development plan and obtain a conditional use permit to construct the hotel for property at 1695 South Hanley was recommended for approval with conditions by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a vote of 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can we roll call, please, Shelley?
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-2.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Bill number 6245, a related matter. Second reading by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second reading of Bill 6245, an ordinance designating a certain tract of land in the city of Brentwood, Missouri as a blighted area pursuant to Chapter 353, the revised statutes of Missouri, approving the development plan submitted for the redevelopment of that blighted area, approving a development agreement in connection therewith, authorizing certain actions in connection therewith, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. Lisa, can we have the synopsis read on this, please?
Bill number 6245, an ordinance designating a certain tract of land to the city of Brentwood, Missouri as a blighted area pursuant to Chapter 353, revised statutes of Missouri, approving the development plan submitted for the redevelopment of that blighted area, approving a development agreement in connection therewith, authorizing certain actions in connection therewith, and containing a severability clause. An ordinance is presented for consideration of approving the EQH Brentwood Redevelopment Area Development Plan. The Brentwood Redevelopment Corporation reviewed the development plan and recommended its approval to the Board of Aldermen. Specifically, the Brentwood Redevelopment Corporation concluded that by reason of age, obsolescence, inadequate or outmoded design, or physical deterioration, the redevelopment area has become an economic and social liability, and such conditions are conducive to ill health, transmission of disease, crime, or inability to pay reasonable taxes. Also, the corporation determined that clearance, replanning, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of the redevelopment area is necessary and in the interest of the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the people of the city. The Board of Aldermen is asked to determine whether it concurs with the recommendation of the Brentwood Redevelopment Corporation. Also, the redevelopment plan requests the board to approve an abatement of real estate taxes of 50% for years 1 through 10 and 25% for years 11 through 15.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6245 into ordinance form.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a motion made by Alderman Kramer and seconded by Alderwoman Sims. Okay, now is the time to have the discussion, folks. Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. When we had this presented to us at the 353 Commission, there's an issue here that I'd like to at least make the board aware of. The property was originally purchased by this corporation at what time? That's the question, Your Honor.
At what time?
Yes.
When?
When did they purchase this property?
Mr. Molinex, if you're in a position to answer that.
March of 2016.
March of 2016. Since that date, have you all put any money or anything into this property, or have you just let it sit at this point?
We currently office out of this property.
The back building that's got an office in it, but there are no...
Well, it's actually the front, the eastmost portion.
Okay, to work with. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Alderman Waggy, sorry about that.
Anything but not late for dinner, right? So I don't think this is in the best interest of Brentwood, especially the abatement. The analysis we saw there was a $1 million net present value of the abatement. And also their analysis showed that it would just improve the profitability of it. In terms of, it being an obsolete property, one of the rationales given for that is that it had no frontage, and the new plan still has no frontage. So I think some of the rationale for considering this blighted in that analysis is not being resolved. So I am not in favor of this tax abatement. I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Weggie.
No.
Motion passes 5 yea, 2 nay, and it becomes ordinance number 4891.
Thank you, Shelley.
Nay. I think it was 5-3.
5-3, yes.
Pardon me?
I think it might have been 3 nay. I think it was Alderman Leahy, Alderman
I
O'Neill.
missed his, you're correct.
That's right.
5-3.
Next on the agenda is Bill number 6246. Can we get a second reading by title only on that, Mr. City Attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second reading of Bill 6246, an ordinance approving a petition to establish the South Hanley Road Community Improvement District, establishing the South Hanley Road Community Improvement District as a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, and directing the city clerk to notify the Missouri Department of Economic Development of the creation of the district.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6246 into ordinance form.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Plufka, seconded by Alderwoman Tice. Any discussion? Synopsis, thank you. See, I'm going to get there. I will remember. Thank you, Alderman Waggy.
Okay, and I'll skip right to the synopsis this time. So Bill number 6246, a proposal to consider the approval by the Board of Aldermen, a petition to establish the South Hanley Road Community Improvement District, and establishing the South Hanley Road Community Improvement District as a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, and directing the city clerk to notify the Missouri Department of Economic Development of the creation of the district.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Any discussion? Alderman Lockmuller.
I guess I have a question, if I could ask, I guess, of Mr. Riley, Cook and Riley.
Sure.
Hello, Mr. Riley.
Good evening.
Regarding the CID, why ask for a district and a cent sales tax? Why not just build that into the room charge? If you're already going to be charging a $5 assessment, what if that 1 cent would equate into maybe $1 or $2 per room per night? Why not build that in? Why come to us for a district?
I think we touched on this a little bit at the public hearing. Part of the impetus or the need of the CID is when we get these projects financed, a lot of times a bank that's lending money to do the project wants to be able to secure on a revenue stream. So this is something that's really discrete that we can identify and approximate and estimate to allow them to have some collateral security agreement against that CID sales tax to further secure the loan. So I think that's the primary driver.
So it would be, with this revenue flow, they would secure a bond, or?
It would more securing the bank loan itself. I don't think there's any plan right now to bond these revenues, but the bank's going to want some additional security for that loan that they're making to help finance the construction of the hotel.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderman Lee.
Thank you. If the CID is approved, is there a limit as to how much that CID can expend out? As I understood it, CIDs couldn't close till all bills are paid.
There is a limit. So, right, in the CID Act itself, under state law, CIDs can only go to reimburse development expenses allowed under state law. So
Okay.
I think in working with Gilmore and Bell as the city's attorneys, we've kind of put together a CID reimbursement process that's part of the development agreement to make sure that as CID eligible costs are seeking to be reimbursed, they're following that protocol. As soon as all those expenses have been paid, then the CID can be terminated and go away. So there is a limit, absolutely.
I'm a little bit more confused, so let me see if I understood what you just said.
Sure.
I establish a CID charge, and in this case, you're looking at a room charge additional fee. But it must be used for the redevelopment cost only.
Correct.
But I'm using the CID money as a loans supporter security.
So there's some documentation elements there that we would not use any of those monies to pay any bank loan unless we ensured that those expenses were CID reimbursable expenses, if that makes sense. There's an element of documentation there that has to be followed and the protocol has to be followed. It's not just money would be turned over to the bank.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Plufka.
Thanks. So this is probably going to expose my ignorance of this process, but do the expenses related to the CID have to be established at the outset, or can they be established sometime during the life of the 10 or the 15, the life of the payback and things like that?
So the categories are defined by the SID Act up front, right? That doesn't change. That's part of state law. Obviously, as you know you're incurring those expenses, they can be identified over time. They don't have to all be identified up front.
So here's my question. If, for instance, we were able to persuade, because Home Depot comes to us and wants to redevelop some southern portion of their property, and to do so, we encourage them to talk with this property owner at that point, let's say a couple of years from now, in the formation of an ingress and egress to that northern light to enhance safety for people coming out onto Hanley Road. Is that the kind of thing that the expense of it, as it pertains to the hotel's expense for the easement or whatever we're talking about, could that be the kind of thing that could be recouped through the declaration of a CID, even though it wasn't in existence at the time it was formed?
It could. There may be some issues there, right? Because
you'd have to come back to us.
We'd have to come back to you to amend the CID petition, because we'd have to expand the boundaries so that if we're going to spend money making easement improvements to give access to that Home Depot lot, that would have to be within the CID boundaries itself.
Okay.
But absolutely, if we created a revenue stream and that was something that wanted to be looked at a later date, we can come back and amend the petition.
And I'm not just picking on Home Depot because of proximity. I mean, there's property to the west, I guess, that would be, I'm getting my directions, I'll turn around, to the west, the property on the other side of the tracks from Metrolink that might provide access out onto Brentwood Industrial and then onto Strassner, and there's a light there at Strassner. Those are the kinds of things that if a redevelopment like that came up and it sort of, there was linkage there between this existing property and that adjacent property, that's something our planning and zoning department might explore. And
yeah, I would think so. In our personal experience, obviously, we've worked with scenarios where, because there was a future need for a CID to participate in some development that would be adjacent to the existing district, we'd go back and could expand the district and maybe even enhance its revenues so it could afford to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Anyone else? Alderman Weggie?
I'll say, I don't think this is in the best interest of Brentwood either. This is a single business CID. These are popping up all over the area. It's not clear, the people that are entering this, that they're entering a new taxable district. I don't see, community improvement happening here other than the profitability of this business. So I just don't think this is good for Brentwood. And I think it sets a bad precedence for future businesses as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Weggie.
No.
4-4.
Yes.
Bill number 6246 passes and becomes ordinance number 4892.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 11A, we have a first reading of Bill number 6255. Can we get that by title only, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Bill number 6255, an ordinance adopting and enacting a new code of ordinances of the city of Brentwood, establishing the same, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, except as herein expressly provided, providing for the manner of amending such code of ordinances, providing for penalty for the violation thereof, and providing when this ordinance shall become effective.
Thank you. Lisa, who's handling this?
Bill number 6255, City of Brentwood Code, has been updated with the 2018 statutory material. The ordinance presented adopts and enacts a new code of ordinances of the City of Brentwood.
Thank you.
I think it's typically a housekeeping matter,
Okay.
just to make sure we're current with state law.
But we're staggering the readings on this just because.
It's a lot of material.
Okay. All right. Any questions by any of the board members about this matter? Seeing none? All right. Next on the agenda is item 11B, bill number 6256. Now, this one, we are doing a first and second reading. Can we get first reading by title only, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, first reading of Bill 6256, an ordinance granting a comprehensive sign plan approval for property at 1695 South Hanley Road.
Thank you. Lisa, can we get the synopsis?
So Bill number 6256, an ordinance approving a petition from EQH Building LLC for a comprehensive sign plan for the Marriott Hotel for property located at 1695 South Hanley Road. The petitioner is requesting 4 wall signs, one for the east, west, south, and north of the building elevations. Additionally, the petitioner is requesting a monument sign along South Hanley Road located at the access drive, along with entrance and exit signs at the southeast corner of the property line.
Thank you. We have a report, or we're going to have...
Yeah, I mean, I can elaborate a little bit on this. So this was just at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. I guess I would call this trying to bundle everything up for the hotel project. So at the time of submission for their site development plan, they did not have their comprehensive sign plan put together at that time. They have since submitted it. As I said, this was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting, and was recommended for approval by a vote of 8 ayes, 0 nays. Again, I think the comprehensive sign plan provision is necessary. As we've talked about, this property is unique in that the building itself sits back from Hanley Road, as well as just the property itself. So I think what they're asking for is a pretty conservative sign plan request. But as I said, it was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and is now in front of you this evening.
Thank you. Any questions? Alderman Plufka.
I have a question about sign 5. It looks like it's oriented to the west of, is that the existing monument sign for the APA?
So it's gonna be a separate sign, but
Sure.
yeah, it would just still be north, sits north of where the APA sign is.
It's north of it.
Yes. There's gonna be room, this is something, again, and correct me though, Greg, if I'm wrong, but I think this area for where the sign easement's going to be is part of the agreement that you're working out with Wayland Security. It'll be,
It's part of actually an existing easement. There's a current sign there that says Q&A Business Solutions. And basically, we're putting the sign in that same location, which is a a filed easement with the county for a sign.
Okay, and so it says, it has, and I don't know, I just don't know how accurate this map is, but it looks like it says sign, and it's pointing to a sign that looks like it's just a little bit to the south and a little bit to the east of where this sign is proposed, sign 5. Is that for Wayland?
I'm not sure. I mean, the exact location of it will still have to meet, if the sign plan was approved, it's still, there's other location requirements within the signage code that they would have to follow.
Okay.
So, making sure that it meets all the sight distance and so forth. So,
Just-
I don't know where I'm going with this. Like, it's maybe not an exact
Okay.
latitude, longitude location for this
So-
particular sign.
But there's no chance that there's going to be, that sign 5's location is going to be some sort of a combined sign?
No.
Okay. It'll be separate, side by side, I'm assuming.
Single entity sign.
I'm sorry, can we get your name?
Sorry, Kevin Chapman with Equus Hotels.
Thank you.
Single entity sign
Right.
advertising the hotel.
Okay. And it'll
With-
be
with
side
the
by side to the
street-
other,
street address.
because there is a sign for Wayland at that location, is there not?
No, Wayland sign is on the north
North
side
side?
of the driveway, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So is there another, I could have sworn, I thought there was another sign in this location, maybe for the APA?
No, the APA sign is obviously south of us. There is a sign in the location.
How far south, though? Not as, I mean, the
Off our,
APA 's-
off our property.
Well, right, but you're within 3 feet of your property here. I mean, so the APA sign is to the north of the entrance into the APA property, right?
Slightly north, I believe. No, slightly east.
There's a
Well, but
sign up by the
as you're
Hanley
going
Road,
south, you
and
hit
then
the sign before you hit the
billboard.
entrance into the APA.
You do.
Okay.
It's on the south side of the entrance to the hotel, which places it north of the APA sign.
Correct, but somebody coming south is gonna, I'm just curious as to whether or not somebody driving south on Hanley Road is gonna see your red sign in the middle of what is an existing APA sign, or are they oriented enough east-west to each other
There's
that they're gonna
enough,
be?
enough east-west separation that
Okay, that's my biggest concern.
yeah,
Thank you.
our sign will be visible.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hey, can we get bill number, with me here a second. Thank you, 6256. A second read of 6256 by title only, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Second reading of Bill 6256, an ordinance granting a comprehensive sign plan approval for property at 1695 South Hanley Road.
Thank you. Motion to perfect.
Your Honor, motion to perfect Bill 6256 into ordinance form.
Second. We've got a motion by Alderman Leahy, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Motion passes and becomes ordinance number 4893.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 12.
Excuse me, Your Honor, we have two resolutions. that
Oh,
got
I'm
added.
sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I completely forgot. Okay. Resolution 1176 and 77. All right. Who wants to take this? Alderman Waggy?
Yeah, I don't know if we sever these. I mean, it'd be kind of fun if we passed them both, actually. But I would say so. When we left after we got the MSD proposal or presentation last meeting, the way we left it is that we would go out and gather feedback from our residents and do it via email, and a draft resolution would be put together. We didn't give direction on if it was in the affirmative or in the negative of what that resolution would be. The reason I drafted one in opposition is that the feedback I got was resoundingly not in favor of re-implementing this tax for a variety of reasons. One, in that the 2016 Proposition S, a selling point was that this tax would be rolled back and not implemented, and then, and their marketing line was that all customers of MSD would be treated equally and given the same service. And re-implementing OMCI, I think, is just flies in the face of that. So, I don't know how we want to handle this, but I think we need to take the strongest possible tenor on this. Instead of not approving a resolution in favor of it, I think we should implement a resolution in opposition to it, and then also follow up with all the other 22 cities that are impacting OMCI with our decision, and be very clear with MSD what our decision was and the feedback we got from the residents.
I'd like to get some an input maybe from our city attorney on this, because the way I see it, we have 1176 and 1177. They're somewhat opposite of each other. 1176 asks that, is a resolution in support of reinstating this tax, and 77 is the opposite of that.
I would take them in order.
Okay.
If you vote in favor of 1176, presumably the vote will be the reverse for the next resolution, or vice versa.
Presumably, right. Okay, Alderman Lockmuller.
But aren't you sending the same message when you vote on the first resolution? If you vote it down, you're sending the message that you don't support?
That's true, but there is a rationale stated in 1177 that isn't on the face of 1176.
And I would say I agree with you. I feel like it's not either or. So by not passing an affirmative resolution, you could be kind of neutral as opposed to strongly opposed. So I wanted to clearly articulate the board position in opposition to the tax.
Alderwoman Tice?
I just want to state one of the things that I had added to the 1177 was talking about not just that we're against fixing flooded roads and areas, but that the city has made a significant commitment on our own with Brentwood Bound, and we are investing a lot of money in that, and our citizens are investing in that. And it's not that we're against, or that I'm against sewer improvements. It's just that the city is doing that, and our citizens don't need more taxes on top of that.
Okay. Alderman Leahy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Following up with Mr. Wiggy's opposition, I too am opposed to wanting to pass this resolution. Back in April of this year, MSD came to the voters and asked to get Proposition S going again, and it did not pass. It failed. It needed a simple majority. It had a 53.9 against it versus 46.07 in favor of it. I think if MSD needs the money to do the job that they have been tasked with, which they do, they need to come back to the voters and educate them. I think it's a bad practice as their elected representatives for us to overrule their vote by saying, let's do something for them and get this tax going again. I think it needs to go to the voters for their approval, not through this board. So I too will not be in favor of 1176, but I will vote in favor of 1177.
Anyone else? Alderman Kramer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask our Assistant City Administrator, I equal my esteemed colleague's vision of the lack of merit here, but there seemed to have been an awful lot of confidence that MSD seemed to display when I saw two different proposals, one at Public Works, one here in our chambers during a Board of Aldermen meeting. Did you get the impression that they visited with other cities and they're all vastly in favor of this, or are we one of the lone stars out of favor?
So my understanding at this point is that most communities haven't responded one way or the other. And I guess I should say that trying to kind of get ahead of things a little bit for this meeting, I actually had called the representative from the last meeting and asked if they had a sample resolution. So that's why, you see 1176 in front of you. It was an endorsement as well, that you should support it. But this one would be modeled after Creve Coeur. So I do know that Creve Coeur had recently passed this resolution in support of. There's quite a few communities, though, that just are in the Deer Creek subdistrict. I can't remember the number. So, and then there's other subdistricts aside. So I don't know exactly, how everyone is viewing this proposal.
Thank you.
Alderman Plufka.
I'll tell you, I think there's a bit of a clue in the resolution itself. The positive resolution includes what looks to me like a payoff to the city of Brentwood. They're proposing in the language to withhold 50% of the money that's gained and give it back to the city to use however the city wants to use it. I think that suggests to me that they are desperate for our approval for this, thinking that if we believe that we're going to benefit financially from it, that we would go along with it. And I also think it also suggests that they care a lot about what the participant communities think. Alderman Leahy.
In responding to Mr. Plufka's observation, at the Public Works meeting, the way it was presented is that MSD would entertain those entities within the district to petition for funds. They did not assure that funds would be given, but they would try to find a formula that would work. Their biggest problem is they don't have enough money to fund the projects that they have defined. So we coming in asking for additional funding for, let's say, for the Brentwood Bound, does not assure that any of those funds would come back to us. They were not in a position to make that assurance to us.
That they suggest that they do in section 1 of the resolution.
Yeah.
That it's our discretion, not theirs.
To petition for it.
No, the use of. It says the use is in our discretion, not in theirs. I mean, I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that perhaps they went farther than that.
They've evolved since July.
Possible.
Yeah. Well,
Alderman Lockmuir.
I'm no fan of MSD, but I do support this resolution in that we even asked her at that Public Works meeting, the representative, and here, if these funds in the second option could then be set aside for us to tap for some of these home drainage issues we have, the sump pump issues that are freezing on sidewalks during the winter. I don't see where we have funds to do that currently. If this was in place, they were saying there'd be $120,000, I believe, a year.
Right.
$120,000
Right.
Set aside for those type of projects. That's why I would be in favor of it.
Alderman Waggy.
So a motion to perfect Resolution 1176.
Second. All right, we've got a motion by Alderman Waggy, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call on this, or is voice vote sufficient?
A voice vote, but you may end up doing a roll call anyway, so why not?
All right,
start with that?
roll call, please, Shelley.
Alderman Kramer,
No.
Alderman Leahy,
No.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
No.
Alderwoman Tice,
No.
Alderman Plufka,
No.
Alderwoman Sims,
No.
Alderman Weggie.
No.
Motion fails, 1 yea, 7 nay.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is resolution number 1177, a resolution of the city of Brentwood opposing reestablishment of MSD's operation, maintenance, and capital improvement Deer Creek Subdistrict. Alderman Weggie, care to speak to this?
This is the, bizarro twin of the first one. So I would say, this is in opposition. I think this is a strong message we need to send to the other municipalities that maybe aren't considering this or paying attention to this coming through. I would also request, if this does pass, that we update the letter and send that out to MSD as well as the other 22 municipalities with our rationale and our decision on this.
Any further discussion? Do we need Alderman Lockmuir.
I guess within this resolution, I have a hard time with the last whereas where it says we're spending $80 million to control flooding in the city. I just don't want to let people think just because what we're doing down there in Manchester Road is going to solve the problem of the neighbor's sump pump in their front yard. I mean, that's a whole different issue. This is only, Brentwood Bound is only going to solve the flooding problem within the Brentwood Bound area, nowhere else.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes, Your Honor. Our valued city attorney instead this evening wondered about the fact that maybe the votes would be similar, opposites for one resolution versus the other resolution. I can make a case for that not being the case, Your Honor. There is a situation, for example, whereby a action on the previous resolution sending a message, some could say is sufficient to MSD, and I would be one of those. So I will not be in favor of the resolution that we're about to entertain, but I was recognizing my action on the previous motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Leahy.
I'd like to make a motion, Your Honor, to approve Resolution 1177.
Second.
I have a motion to approve by Alderman Leahy and seconded by Alderman Weggie. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Kramer?
No.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
No.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Resolution passes 6 yea, 2 nay.
Thank you, Shelley. Next on the agenda now, citizen comments. Item 12. Anybody in the public or in the audience care to address the board? Now is your time to do so. Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion to go into closed meeting pursuant to RSMO 610.021 legal dash subsection 1 and real estate subsection 2.
So, and adjourn from there, sir?
Sure.
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion by Alderman Leahy and seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any discussion? Alderman Kramer.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, point of order question. Do we have an opportunity for personnel at that meeting or no? And if so, can we state so now?
I'm sorry?
Amend the motion.
Can amend the motion if you'd like.
Is it?
I don't think there's any need to.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, we'll leave it like it is.
Okay. All right. Roll call, please, Shelley.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
And Alderman Weggie?
Yep.
Motion passes.
We are adjourned and we will meet back in the conference room in, let's say, 5 minutes. Thank you.